Hello, my name is Mike, and here to share a little insight on the water business. I've been in the business for almost 28 years, and started out in the late 90s working for a rain soft dealer, traditional water softener and RO systems, some carbon tanks and stuff like that, and ended up moving over to a Culligan dealer. So combined, just over 10, about 11 years in that business. This was in the Midwest, and so the water was fairly hard coming from wells. So we had a lot of softeners. We did lake systems and a lot of commercial Alcoa, GE, Sabic, Alcan, um, hospitals and stuff like that. So I have a lot of insight as far as the traditional water softening business, reverse osmosis, and those type of that type of technology. Um, but after I got out of that, I never stopped researching and never really got out of the water business. But I just kind of switched my focus to alternative methods, leaving the minerals intact, but controlling hardness through different types of media, and then also using proprietary magnets. And a lot of this stuff had a bad reputation when you were the Culligan man. It was just all chalked up to it doesn't really work. The only way to solve your water problems is to put a softener in there. I'm here to tell you that's not true, not accurate. Um, Most of the technology that has been introduced or repackaged and resurfaced again um, is short of one thing, and that's correct application. These things will work, and there are companies that do make really good products if they're applied correctly. The problem is if they're not applied correctly, the whole genre of that industry is poo-poo, and everybody stays away from it because they have this uh, built-in idea that it doesn't work. Um, well, it does, but they don't. It's not mainstream, and it's not something you see on ads on TV or anything like that, or hear on the radio, or even probably read about it. But I've been applying this technology, and it does work if it's correctly applied. I've freelanced for a company for about close to a year, and they were doing alternative water treatment. They were using structuring devices. Now, structuring devices, I know that there is a benefit to them, again, if they're applied correctly, um, but it's still all kind of wrapped up in a mystery, too. Um, there are things that you can see uh, that have been apparently posted through lab tests on this particular technology, but that's as close as I've ever gotten. Just looking at that and researching and understanding where it originated and the technology, but I don't have a lab facility. I can't tell you. I don't have the equipment to test it. I'm usually just look at what the results are, what the customer is telling me when it comes to that kind of stuff. Um, I'm also involved in the hydrogen water technology, if you want to say that. These are ionizers. I was and I still currently am a dealer for Tyant, which is the probably the arch nemesis of Enagic or Kangen. Those are two of the bigger ones out there that sell ionizers and that type of technology. It's only tying. I don't believe Kangen has an under-the-counter system yet. The problem was they first started out running, water through these electrolysis machines, and filtration was questionable at that point. I kind of, even though I maintain, using this technology, I kind of steered off in the direction of higher quality target filtration, just to clean up the water before you're going to run electricity to it. So that's kind of where my research has gone into finding companies, smaller companies, labs. I work currently with a lab, and again, back to the structuring I did for about a year. They the owner had passed away, and they kind of dissolved and broke up parts of that business. But in my time with them, I developed a relationship with a lab. It's a facility that sells imported carbons and media and stuff. It's from a company called Watchwater. They're a German engineering company, and they produced carbons, what they call a ZVI. It's an iron coated carbon. It has a double backbone, so it basically takes the place of your activated or your catalytic carbons. It just kind of combines both of the same or qualities and nuances of each one of those different types of carbon and things that you're trying to attract, absorb, and reduce out of the water supply. So they have a lot of great filtration. They have the ability to test it, since they do have a working lab at their facility. So it's something I developed a relationship with them. Again, when the owner of the company passed away, they dissolved their relationship with this particular lab and distributor of medias. And so I have them. I also deal with a company here in California. I'm in Southern California, that has a proprietary magnets that they've been in business for well over 30 years. They're not mainstream, but they have tons of testimonials, and applied correctly, these things do work. And I have applied them myself, and I know that they do work. And the customers that I put them on tell me they do work. So I know that they're a great alternative to your traditional water softening and treatment, and these things are, they have a 125-year minimum lifespan. They have a 90-day money-back guarantee. They have a on the residential side, and they have a lifetime warranty on them. You can mount them anywhere, inside, outside. Just have to have room on the plumbing to do the stack, and then they're also retreated on the water coming out of whatever, tankless or tank water heater that you would have. And that's the biggest thing with proprietary magnets, is they will work, but once you heat the water, all bets are off, and that they'll revert back to their natural charge and start bonding again and creating scaling issues once the water's heated. I've dealt with many plumbers. I was also in the heating and air and plumbing fields. I did that for a number of years, but never leaving the water research or doing that on a part-time basis and consulting and things of that nature. But yeah, I talked to many different plumbers, many water uh, providers, all the technologies that they're using, and for the most part, they're all very similar. They all use the same industry standard carbons. Some will use parts of, especially when you're looking at hardness control, they're using things called like filter sorb, which is a tack. I believe they call them. It's a nucleation process, and basically the media inside coats the ions or the calcium, magnesium in the water and keeps them from bonding and attracting. There's uh, argument that phosphates, which are used typically in, I think it's like 25% of the municipal supplies around the country, that add phosphates to the water. And the phosphates coat the plumbing, and they're there to protect the plumbing from corrosion and all of that. The main problem with and the reason for the corrosion is years ago, and somewhere in the early 2000s, maybe a little before that, they introduced chloramines, which is ammonia and chlorine. Chlorine has always been kind of their sanitation disinfectant for bacteria in the water. They need to use that to kill the bacteria before they ship it to your house, because they obviously can't send you a water full of microbes and all that stuff in there. So, but what they were finding is they were using a tremendous amount of chlorine, and it was kind of hard to gauge. Our water and municipal supplies typically comes from a water tower that sits on a hill somewhere, and as it opens up, it just flows out to whatever circuit that the homes are on, that it typically feeds in the neighborhoods. And if you're chlorinating the water, the first few branches of that closest to the water tower seem to get impacted the most, with the highest concentrations of chlorine in the water. So they wanted to find a way to minimize that and to maximize the bacteria killing agent, the chlorine. So they encapsulated that they bond that with ammonia, which will keep that stable, keep it from gassing off, so it goes further down the chain to get to the end houses on that circuit from the water tower. The problem with that is it's a very aggressive chemical reaction, and mainly to the copper in the houses and joints in the water heater, and it will deteriorate those things. They will never really come out and fully admit that, but since 2000, we've had a whole new process going on, and many companies have just exploded in the market, and that's the repiping industry. This whole industry was spawned for some reason because people were having pinhole leaks in all of their copper plumbing, and where we live in California, a lot of houses are built on slabs. So when you have a major pinhole leak in a slab, you just have to reroute all the plumbing, and that tends to be cutting many holes in the wall, and rerouting all the plumbing down to all your fixtures and all that stuff. And typically they stay away from, they're using PEX, and they stay away from the copper. So once that's done, unless there's a failure or somebody shoots a screw into one, that you should be good for another 25, 30 years, hopefully better. But yeah, this, that the main thing when it comes to the chloramines, you need a catalytic carbon to remove that. Now, activated carbon, you can remove chlorine, but you need a catalytic carbon to remove chloramines. So you need a specialized carbon that can bond with that molecule in there and take care of it and reduce it, and hopefully down to next to nothing, so you can save not only your plumbing, but what you're bathing in, and potentially what you might be drinking. So again, back to this, what most of the industry does is they do a mixed bed of carbon. They'll have part activated carbon, and in a equal part of a catalytic carbon that they put in there that will reduce those contaminants. And actually they are contaminants, but part of it is the sanitation. It does serve a purpose, but the end result is you probably don't want to be drinking it, and you don't want to be bathing in it. So at a point of entry or a whole house system, that's something that they try to do, put these two different types of carbons together, and get as much of that stuff out that protects your plumbing and fixtures and stuff like that. And the problem is, most of the industry standard carbons have an effective flow rate. There's a difference between a service flow rate and an effective flow rate. If you put a filter in line, you can pump a lot of water through it, but it doesn't mean that there's enough of a contact time for this to actually reduce those down to non-detectable levels, like chloramines and that kind of stuff that's in the water. You need a deep carbon bed for as the water's going in, depending on the flow rate and all of that stuff. Typically, in the neighborhood I live, these houses are, 3 bedroom, 2 bath, and they have the ability to flow up to 10 gallon a minute flow rate. Maybe a little bit higher than that. Typically, you're looking at the average household in this size of a house. You got 3 or 4 people. You might be 6-8 gallons a minute flow rate. Well, the carbon, each one of those carbons that's doing something a little bit different in there. Typically what they do is they may add some other things, garnet and that stuff, and by the time they use up that space, they usually have room enough to put 3/4 of a cubic foot of activated, 3/4 of a cubic foot of catalytic in there. And your typical 1 cubic foot of each one of those, they're rated at, they say 3.5 to 5 gallons a minute. I would probably be a lot more conservative on that, and call that closer to 3 gallon a minute flow rate. And it's depending on what you're trying to get out of the water. But if we're just talking about chloramines, you're probably closer to that 3 gallon a minute. That's at a cubic foot. Now, if you drop that down to 3/4 of a cubic foot, you probably have an effective flow rate of somewhere around 5 total gallons a minute, if that. And that's not reducing everything completely out of the water, it makes a difference. You're going to get aesthetics, taste, and odor that will come out. And typically, a person, if it smells good and it tastes better, then you're not tasting the very strong, chlorinated taste of the water. In your mind, it's solved. That problem's gone. But it's really just the aesthetics. You're still gonna probably get some free chlorine coming past that, depending on, again, the flow rates. If you have heavy flow rates, you're not going to be able to have enough contact time to remove all that stuff out of the water with a foot and a half of a mixed bed carbon tank. You're just not. And I see these things going. I mean, I have accounts with, all the, a couple of the major water distributor houses, wholesale houses, and also with, plumbing houses and stuff like that, Hirsch, Ferguson's. And I know that if I was to go down there and purchase one of their units, and put it in somebody's house, I know what I would do it for. But typically to the plumbers out in the field, and this is not disparaging plumbers at all, because I would say I'm an average plumber. I have certain strengths that that I have in that service industry. One of them, I've installed hundreds of water filtration devices, equipment, whole house filters, big stuff. I have a lot of experience doing that, and typical service plumbing. So some of these guys are very good at what they do. One thing that I usually tend to say is I'm first and foremost, I'm a water guy. I've I don't know everything, but I've surrounded myself around people that can get me the answers. I do have a lot of experience in it, and I know my fair share about water in the whole treatment industry. But I'm humble enough to know that even the lab tech that's been doing it for 20 plus years is still very humble about it, saying, knowing that he's kind of scratching the surface, and he deals with it all day long. So to have somebody in the plumbing business, now there are a few guys that are very well versed and understand, some water treatment aspects, but for the most part, they don't. It's like saying, I know a lot of people get caught up in that too. I'll just have my, I need some kind of filtration. I'll just have my plumber come over and do it. He's in water. Well, yes, he is in water, but he pipes it from one end of the house to the other. As far as the dynamics of water filtration and flow rates and that kind of stuff, for the most part, they do not understand that. They're not very well versed in that. And again, I'm not taking anything away from what they do. Very good at what they do, solve a lot of problems. Water conditioning is usually not one of them. It's like going to a doctor. If you got a toothache, you're not going to go to a heart surgeon, and if you got a heartache, you're not going to go to a dentist. So they're two different types of service, completely two different types. So, and that's kind of been the real issue with the water business itself. Is you have companies that they don't go and solicit you. They don't come and contact you and say, hey, we're here to solve your water problem, typically. Some of the bigger guys out there. and they don't work with you one on one directly. What they found out is it's much easier is to have a business already with an existing, customer base of, two, three, four, 500, 1,500 people or whatever, that they say, hey, look, I'm going to sell you this system. This is what this system does. You tell your customers, and then if you have any questions, you call us, and then we'll give you the right size or whatever, and you just put that thing in. But it's usually, it's typically like a one size fits all platform. They might have a bigger system, gives you more carbon in it. They might have something that they use. I know some of them use a magnet inside, which whatever it does on the cold water side, if there's any significant help, once you heat the water, that's all bets are off anyway on that one. But I know some of these systems, once the plumber buys them at their price point, then they turn around and they'll sell these things and install them for, 4 times that amount. So you're basically paying 5, 6, plus $1,000, for a system that realistically, if you had the resources and the experience to do it, you can build these things for a fifth of the price for what they're providing. That technology, so it's kind of the whole water business is turned in, and this whole industry is turned into kind of a racket. No, we have the best. No, we have the best. And then when you really look at them and you get to the nuts and bolts, it's the same thing. There's a different color tank. Maybe they got a stainless steel jacket on it, and there's a different name tag. And realistically, unfortunately, that's the only real difference in them. So, my goal and passion was to actually fix somebody's water. Pull a water report, look to see what's in it. Figure out how big the home is, what the customer wants to achieve, and then do that for a fair price and drop ship it. I'm here in California, so obviously I'm coming out of the business. I have a lot of friends that have started their own plumbing companies after they've left the plumbing shops and stuff like that. So I usually just have them, come out, and they give us a very fair price. So now somebody can enjoy a much better quality of water and not break the bank doing it, because it's just me. I want to make money, yes I do, but I don't have a huge overhead. I kind of act as just a consultant. I consult with people, figure out what they're trying to achieve, and then put them a system together and have it drop shipped or have it shipped to me if they're close enough. And then I go over there with my plumber when everything is in, and then we get it all taken care of for them. So I like that model of doing that. And what I'm doing is I'm using the same clack valves as the other guys out there. And these, there's no mystery in it. I don't have to carry any warranties myself, except for the installation, which falls to my plumber. And usually I'm on site, so I make sure everything's together and they're started up correctly. But the clack valves, the structural or vortex tanks, riser pipes, all of the components that make up a whole house system, and whatever hardness control, and then whatever drinking system that you have, these are all backed by the manufacturer's warranties. So I can mirror that right on to the customer and just pass that right to them. And they have these warranties because it doesn't come from me, it comes right from the manufacturer. So I know there's a lot of people out there that still shop by name brand recognition, and there's a certain peace, I guess, or comfort by doing that while they've been in business for X amount of years, and they've been out there. I just call the Culligan man or whomever else to come out and take care of it. Well, there's a price tag that is associated with that, and for the most part, you're getting an identical piece of equipment than the next guy that's selling it to you at $1,000 less. It's just really it's all marketing when it comes to that, and people promising that they have a 10-year maintenance-free system. That's just not true. It's not even possible. If you're one person and you don't hardly use it, you take one bath a week, maybe you're going to stretch it out 10 years. But if you're a typical family of 3 or 4, these things are not going to last 10 years with the little amount of carbon in them. I've been in this business. I've rebed hundreds of carbon tanks out there, and I know typically how long these things last. And it varies, and it all depends on what's in the water, how much water are you actually using. So to say that these things will just automatically, it's 10 years out there, that to me is just, it's irresponsible, and it's just not true. It's not true because the plumbers that I do know that are familiar with these are out there replacing tanks all the time, ripping them out or exchanging tanks because they're just not lasting. I don't know how they end up on their warranty or anything like that. Well, from what I'm told is they don't. Maybe the tank's free, but the labor isn't, because somebody has to go out there and replace this tank. But one of the plumbers I spoke with, his understanding is that none of it was under warranty. But I can't make a definitive statement on that. I do not know, because I don't deal with any of them. So when I put a system together, and we find, so for a home like the one that we're in, which is the 3-bedroom, 2-bath, but 1,200 square foot, we got 4 people. I use 2 cubic foot of the ZVI carbon. This is a zero valent iron coated carbon. The unique thing about it is it really does have the ability to actually withstand regenerations. We can actually put in a powder mix and regenerate this, and it oxidizes all of the stuff on it, turns it inert, and it flushes down the drain. If we do that every year to 18 months, you can literally get 10 plus years out of the system. The manufacturer says that it can withstand up to 50 to 60 life cycles, which would be 50 to 60 years. They haven't been out 50 to 60 years, but I know that where I get this product from, which now is well over 10 years old, they've never taken a tank back, which is a strong indication that it will last. At least that, I would say, if that's the case, conservatively, could we say 15 to 20 years? If that's that's the lifespan of the entire system. So if you could have a system, a whole house system that would last 20 years, that's definitely getting your money's worth out of that. And again, I use 2 full cubic feet of this, and it gives a lot of contact time. And now we're up closer to the 10 to 12 gallon a minute effective flow rates for a system that size, and we're getting very good reductions all across the board because the double backbone ZVI carbon is also going to reduce things that traditional industry standard carbons cannot touch, like arsenic and fluoride and other contaminants in the water. So it's going to get a good across the board reduction on a lot of that. And make no mistake, if you want everything completely down to non-detectable, which I'm going to say is a very much an improbability. I would almost say an impossibility to do that. And I can explain that later, but anybody that is suggesting that their system is going to give you pristine water and it's God's aquifer and it's removing everything. Remove, reduce. Those are two words that you got to pay attention for. I talk about reductions. We reduce these things to the best of our ability because we don't understand each and every one's habits, the total amount of flow rates that's going to be going through this. So we shoot for a little overkill and we try to get the best reduction that we can. Removal, that's usually in anybody that is a good water guy will not even have that word in his vocabulary because it's something that is quite frankly impossible to do, to promise to remove. Can we get things down to non-detectable levels? Sure, there are things that we can do that. But for an example, the easiest thing for a reverse osmosis to remove from the water, and that's how they were originally designed. They were originally designed for desalinization, to remove sodium from water. And that's one of the easiest things that it can do, and it gets out 99.6 or 8% of that. Well, that's not 100. So if you had a strong enough meter, you're still going to be able to find some traces of sodium in the water. So that's just kind of an example. To remove that completely from the water, again, is usually at best an improbability, but usually an impossibility to do that completely. But we get them down to very much safer levels. Things that, where you can feel quite confident in having your kids bathe in the water. And then obviously we can refine the water, the quality even further underneath the kitchen sink, because the kitchen sink typically is going to be at way slower flow rates. Now you're not talking 6, 8, 10 gallon a minute. Now you're talking a gallon a minute. Now at a gallon a minute, you don't need quite as big a filter because the flow rate has already bought you contact time because it's not moving as fast. So we can refine the water underneath there. And then at that point, if you're just wanting to clean it up, if you want to remineralize with coral calcium, magnesium, potassium, we do all that stuff. Ionize it, put it through even tourmaline filter-driven systems. With tourmaline will give you ORP values. It'll give you far infrared, and then you'll get an alkaline water because the minerals basically bring the alkalinity back up to a certain point. You're going to get a much stronger hydrogen-rich water if you put some sort of an ionizer, a powered system where you're actually running water through plates and it's running electricity through it, charging the ions in the water. But you, again, whatever you do, you want to have a really good filter system that's set before that, that's cleaning up all that water before you do any kind of other processing with the water. So, now on to hardness control. In my area, many areas around the country, there's hardness issues, and that's the suspended minerals in the water, the calcium, magnesium. They bond together, create lime scale, plug up fixtures, and all that stuff. And this is kind of on a, let's figure out what you got in your water. What are we dealing with? Now we know how to apply the right solution to it. And again, going back to GMX, the proprietary magnets, they will take care of the hardness issues. They don't remove them. They're not an ion exchange. They're not a typical sodium-based softener or potassium-based, whatever. But what they do is they keep them from bonding, and they keep them from scaling and causing all the normal headaches that hard water does. And it depends on how hard the water is. I mean, out here, 18 to 20, 22 grains per gallon. Yeah, you would increase maybe the magnetic fields that they're in by an extra stack, and then same coming out of the water heater, and then any recirculation lines that are going around that you're going to get a treatment onto as well. And that will just keep that water that's moving through, it will constantly keep it through that magnetic field and treating the water, causing it not to form bonds and stick and scale and stuff like that. So they're very good long-term solutions, and the price point on this stuff is a lot less than what traditional mainstream companies are doing. They obviously have to have an increased profit to pay for their sales, their lights, their office personnel, their employees, and all that stuff. And which I don't have that. I go right to a wholesale house, and I purchase whatever the tank size is, whatever head, clack valve or fleck valve, whatever we're going to put on this thing, all the components together in there. So you got the shell of the exterior of the system, all the connections, bypass, all of that stuff. And then through the lab, I will purchase the media, whatever blend of carbon, and they have. It's not just the ZVI. If you have high arsenic in the water, excuse me, they're going to have different blends that they can mix with that. They're all regeneratable, so you can regenerate any media blend they put together. So you still have that option with that. And this is just, it's all going to fit into this cylinder, and this tank is going to be, we're going to deduce how big it needs to be by, home size and what we're trying to get out of there. And, this media is quite a bit more expensive. But again, I don't have to, charge 4 or 5 fold of what I'm purchasing in equipment, because I'm just me, and I'm just operating as a consultant. And so I can put all this stuff together. I usually, if I run into water where there's a little bit of difficulty, I usually tend to have a little powwow with the lab tech and the owner at the facility where I get the media from, and they'll run through, get the numbers. I send them the water report for the area that I'm working in, and then they'll put it all together, give me the right suggestion, to take care of this. And then, depending on where the customer's at, if they're really gung-ho about wanting to eliminate as much as they can, we have add-on electropositive filters, and arsenic filters and all that stuff. A lot of times, some of the stuff we're dealing at the whole house, if you have a good platform at the whole house, that will enable you to safely bathe in it and wash your clothes, just utility working grade water. It's going to be good stuff. And even watering plants and all that stuff is going to be good. But if we want to really refine it, we can do that for a lot less, because these are 1-year filters underneath the kitchen sink, underneath for a drinking system. And you can target that a lot less. It's more cost effective to do that if you're not, if there's anything in the water that you can absorb through your skin layer, like chlorine, chloramines, and that kind of stuff. Yeah, we want to get that stuff out of there. But when it comes to underneath the kitchen sink, that's going to be for stuff that you're ingesting, so just don't drink the toilet water or the shower water, and get you a good filter system. And then that would be all your drinking and cooking and all that. And then we could talk about the bottled water industry, the $billion industry that has come about. And most everybody out there has been out there a long time. I'm not going to make any claims, but everybody's read about endocrine disruptors, microplastics, and plastics are made of nothing but chemicals. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out if you're getting your water from one of the big box stores out there, and they happen to be sitting out in a parking lot, with the sun baking on them. It's just not, to me, it's not the best option. And it's getting very expensive, to buy bottled water. If I'm dying of thirst, if somebody offers me a bottle of water. I was a heating and air guy in Florida. My gosh, that was one of the first things I learned after bringing a gallon of water with me throughout the day. When we might be out there from 7 to midnight. Anybody offers you a bottle of water, you take it and you drink it, because you just need to. But is it ideal? If you're thirsty, it is, but if you have other options and you can utilize and have the water that I know this is the water that's coming into my house. I know this is the solution that we used to clean up the water coming into my house. And if you have that and you have that knowledge and you understand what you're doing to the water and you're making it, light years better than what it's been, that's your best. That is the best solution, and the best choice is to have your own clean water, coming into your house. That way you know what it is. You're basically bottling it yourself, and you're using, stainless steel or glass, to drink out of. Then you're making a much more healthy option available to you and your family by doing that than trusting in one of these bottled distilleries. We got them all over here now, alkaline water, 9.9 pH, and all that stuff. And the truth is, if you have your own ionizer at home, it has the ability to create what they call a negative ORP value, which is an oxidation reduction potential. And that is easily just simply a an antioxidant effect. So if you can measure, which you can with a meter, blueberries right off the vine. If you were able to squeeze the juice and put your meter in there, you'd have a negative ORP, organic orange from the tree. You'd have a negative, 150 or a 200 coming off of that, and that's showing you the antioxidant effect. Well, that's on a time clock. As soon as you pull it from the vine, and same with ionizers, as soon as you fill it, once the oxygen hits it, it's on time clock. That stuff starts ticking back up the other way, right? Negative 200, negative 150, negative 100, and so on and so on. The tests I've done, I checked mine, which was like a negative 300 in the morning, 280 something in the morning. By noon, I retested it, and it was back into the positive range, a plus 40 or something like that. So that means it's an oxidizing agent at that point. So again, it's on a timetable, and that's the things that you're going to get if you're drinking the water fresh. If you fill up your bottle and you're drinking it fresh, you're going to get those benefits there. If you're buying it from a distillery or if it's already pre-bottled, you probably don't even have any of that left. Now the pH will hang around, for several days. I had a buddy that tested his. He would fill a big glass bottle and use it as a dispenser, and he did that, ran tests on it, and he got about a week before the pH started dropping back out of that. So if it's mineral-based water, you're drinking between 8 and 9 pH. That's alkaline. I don't suggest going much over 9.5. And some of these companies out there that are selling the ionizers, they will promote the fact that it gets a negative 650. Well, I don't know. I don't have anything in my yard. I got a lemon tree. I don't have anything around my house or even at my local grocery store that I could match to prove that something that high in antioxidant comes from nature. I mean, maybe there is something out there, but I've never seen that. So if there's not, and you're not actually getting that, how can we compare any of that to nature? They were having people drink water that was, 10.5 or 11 or 11.5 pH. How do our stomach is balanced. It's pH balance, and medications, all that stuff are designed for the 1.6 or whatever it is in our gut and in the pH in our bodies. When you start introducing super high pHs like 11.5, that's an emulsifier. 11.5, if you drop that into olive oil, it'll just turn it into cloudy milk. It'll just start separating the oil in the water. It won't separate on layers. I mean, it'll just dissolve the oil in the water. So it's something that it's not something that we should be drinking. 9.5, that would probably be the max of where we're at. And if you get in a habit of drinking alkaline water, I usually start people off at 8, just over 8, and then have them drink that for a few weeks, and then jump up to 9 at that point, because you just want to introduce your body to this if that's not what you're normally have been drinking. Most people are drinking bottled water, which is I would say it's better as far as the pH, because what they've done is they've introduced their mineral mixture back into it. Culligan used to do this all the time. We had somebody actually bottle for us, And part of the thing was they had to use our recipe, which was, a bag of our mineral mix that was, mixed into the water after it went through the RO process. The problem is if you don't have what RO strips minerals, it just takes all the minerals out of the water. So you're going to have a very low TDS. When you add new minerals to water, they need something to bond with. They need other ions in the water to bond with. Otherwise, most of them are just free suspended saturation of minerals in the water. And so it's not really making up the water molecule. It does affect the pH because when you add minerals to it, it's going to raise the pH of the water. But it's not really combining and making a mineral, so or a healthy water molecule. So I've stayed away. I've never been a fan of RO. It has its place. We did DI water, which I see out there, zero water. Well, DI water, that's what you wash your car with a car wash. That's what they use on, dialysis, equipment in hospitals and stuff. It's not intended for drinking, and, that's what I mean. Some of these people that get out there just see something that they can exploit and that they just see dollar signs. Oh, well, if this is good, then this is much better. If I'm drinking, 8 pH, then, if I'm drinking, 11 and a half pH, that means that it must be, 10 times as good. No, it doesn't work that way. And so when you have a lot of these like Kangen or Enagic, most of these were just people, they invested in a machine, they had to buy a machine, and then they got to go out and sell one and make whatever 40-50% profit on anything that they sold. Well, they would they would do that, and they got a little bit of tutelage from these Tupperware parties they would go to, and the people that were doing the demonstration. And so they would learn how to do that. They would learn how to explain, and get a new vocabulary of some catchphrases and words that they would just go out there and regurgitate, to the public to get them to purchase this. And I've talked to a number of them. That's how I got introduced to this, back in 2000 and I think 2008, 2009. That's the first time I saw ionizers, and I thought, well, yeah, but I don't want to pay, close to $5,000 for a system. So that's kind of led me in my research, and I got another friend that's in here in California. He's in the Laguna Beach area, and he worked in the electronics field, and he had relationship with Japanese manufacturing, and so he had his own commercial grade ionizers made, and then his part was primarily lab techs, target filtration, worked with the EWG. They mapped out at that time the 13 different geological water tables, all that stuff. So he's been in this for a long time, well over 20 years. And but back to the Enagic, Kangen, type of sales, it was just they had gotten in trouble, making claims, wow, if you drink this, is you're gonna cure your cancer or whatever you have. Now, the caveat is, I personally know people that have changed their lifestyle, introduced ionized water, and had great success with reversing things like cancer and diabetes and all that. And these are, family, friends of family. So I it's not just anecdotal. I knew of these people, or my sister, knew of these people that has happened to, and a couple of people that I know that have turned things around. But I think it's extremely irresponsible for anybody to go out there and make these bold claims about uh, something that they don't know a whole lot about. Because not that they might be ignorant of what causes cancer or what is cancer or anything like that, but they don't know this person's circumstances. They don't know, their habits or any of that stuff. So, if you're trying to reverse something, water, that's a great start. Cleaning up your water, perhaps ionized water if that's what you choose. Cleaning it up and drinking a lot more of it is a fantastic start to begin with. And then obviously you would have to look at your diet, no processed food, nothing with all the GMOs and the chemicals and all the other garbage in there too. Because I think that just exacerbates any current health issues that you might have. Is, the biggest thing is the inflammation, that we get just from our lifestyle, just breathing the air, drinking the water, eating the processed foods. The good thing about mineral based water is, and it actually structured mineral based water, is that the ions in the water, that's our cleansing, recovery, nutrition for the body would be the ions in the water attracting the heavy metals. And if you look up in the air and you've paid any attention, we're inundated with all of that stuff. In foods, the toxicity of all the stuff that we're doing, to get ahead of it, help our bodies purge from this stuff, to have good mineral based water. That is key. Ionized, hydrogen rich. That's a plus to me, my opinion. But just good structured mineral based water, and a lot of it, putting down the sodas and the sugary juices and all that stuff. Any of the bottled juices they're they're about as good as a Coca-Cola. So we don't do a lot of that stuff here. Mainly just water. But anyway, my my goal in all of this, I've helped you know many people over my life. And here recently, when I started with the my relationship with the lab, I did a few posts on Reddit, and I got a lot of feedback on there, just because people had come to the conclusion that I've looked everywhere and they all seem to be the same thing. And that's my kind of contention. And I want people to be able to do their own research. If you're gonna if you're gonna spend whatever it is, two, four, five, $6,000 or whatever your investment would be into anything. I mean, it behooves somebody, and it's very prudent for them to do at least their own investigation and their own research, and to kind of narrow things down, or at least come to the conclusion that while everybody else is the same, I got to look for somebody that's a little bit different, doing things a little bit different than all these guys out here. And, once you get to that point, then the conversation becomes easier for both of us. It becomes something that, yes, you understand, or what I'm trying to tell you, and I'm not trying to condemn anybody out there, because if you're trying to fix water, and clean it up, which anybody that offers you any kind of carbon, you cannot deny that it's doing something to it. My contention is it's not doing what they're saying it's doing to it, or what they're leading you on to believe that it's doing. That's my problem. And then trying to, maximize their profits, by charging you an arm and a leg, because this thing is sliced bread 2.0, and it's not. It's just not. And if somebody's very honest, they're going to tell you, hey, we're going to do the best we can. And, the head start that we're going to have is we're going to start with much better components going inside, much better carbons, medias. I think we have a much better solution, even in ionization, target filtration underneath the kitchen sink, even hardness control. You just can't beat something that and to give you an idea, this house here, the hardness control, the GMX for my home here, I'd pay retail $1,500 or whatever retail, and if you put them on yourself, it wouldn't cost you anything else, and they're lifetime 90-day money back guarantee, lifetime warranty. They're going to last the minimum of 125 years, and you can put them outside, inside, outside, doesn't matter. It's just a great solution to that. Instead of, I don't think you can buy. You go to Home Depot, maybe you can, and if you install it yourself. But you're not going to buy a softener from a softener company for less than $2,000, especially here in California. You're going to be $2,000 at least in something like that. And then what are you, depending on how much salt you're using? And here it's almost pretty much outlawed in many places. You can't run brine water when it discharges to the drain anyway. So that's not an option for many people out here in California. But even if you can, I mean, you're lugging bags. If you're in the Midwest, you're probably lugging bags of salt downstairs and dropping them in there. And then at that point, you're not going to clean. It's not cleaning the water. It's taking the hardness out. It's not a filter. It's a ion exchange. Its primary job is to remove the calcium, magnesium from the water. And if you have chloramines in there, you better put a carbon filter in front of it, because it'll turn your synthetic resin bed into applesauce. I've seen that many, 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 many times. So it's just, it's a fix. Is it a good one? Is it a good solution? Maybe it is to you, but not to me. I want the minerals in the water. I do want to tether them down, break surface tension, and keep them from scaling and causing problems, because I want to utilize those minerals. I want to utilize those minerals by bonding them with much healthier minerals, new coral calcium, magnesium, potassium, those kind of things before it hits a drinking system. And if you can put the hardness, keep the hardness at bay, and continue to keep the minerals in the water and do that, these are long time solutions, for that. It's like a one and done. Once you set it up, you never think about it again. They just continue to work. So, basically, there are a lot of other solutions, better solutions. And again, with my almost 28 years, I've been researching this for a long time, talking to all kinds of companies. I've seen many of them. I worked in the plumbing shops, and I've seen some of the things that they've used there too. It wouldn't be my wouldn't even be my 10th choice, but to be honest with you, but I don't use that stuff. I don't want to use that stuff. But I also, again, I don't want to tell you what to do, other than the fact that do some research first. You get something in your mind. I'm not here to talk anybody out of anything. If this is where your research led you, this is what you want to do. This is, in your mind, this is the best for you and your family. God bless you. Have at it. Do that. my thing would be is if that's the case, I'm going to leave some information so you can get a hold of me and I can pass on, a phone number. You can feel free to give me a call. I consult with anyone, free of charge, and just, you know, tell you a little backstory and kind of what's out there and what I see, and I try to keep on up on the stuff that's coming out. I know the Halos, the Springwells, Pelican when they were doing their thing, and so I've a Life Source. I've researched quite a bit into these and even spoke with them directly, about their systems, and then obviously I have the lab I deal with it. They're very much on top of the new stuff out there, and they're they're testing it, proving it, showing where it doesn't take a whole lot because they're all using kind of the same components anyway. But back to I'll leave some information in the description, and you'll be able to reach out. I'll leave my email address, and you can send me an email, and if you want to leave your contact information, I'll give you a text first, let you know it's me, and then we can talk about things. And if you're a person that just wants, especially if you're a DIY person that just wants to install their own piece of equipment, they don't want the high end carbon blends from the German engineered company. They just want Centaur, or the traditional industry standard stuff. I get that too, and I can drop ship you that. Save you some money. I can make a little bit of money and just have it drop shipped to you, and give you a fair price that you're probably not going to find anywhere else, and I can make a little bit of money for my time and stuff like that. So I'd be happy to do that. I'm always encouraging people to again explore what some a lot better solutions that are out there, but I'm not gonna beat you over the head with my water Bible and tell you got to think my way. I've just discovered this being in it for many years, that there's just a handful of people that I even deal with on this stuff, because everybody else is it's all kind of the same. I just had a meeting with they're huge, and I'm sure you've heard of them. I'm not going to mention their name, but they're big. They sell to all the Ace Hardwares, or a lot of them. They're getting their feet in the door into a lot of the plumbing houses, and swapping out their what they used to do as far as systems and filtration, and putting offering what they have and their solutions. And some of it looks okay. They even build their own filter housings and stuff like that, and they're pretty big. They're pretty big. But at the end of the day, they're all using the industry standard carbon. I had mentioned to the president of sales there, hey, are you familiar with the ZVI blend? Never heard of it. So it's just, to me, it's just some of these things, maybe they did hear of it, maybe they know that it costs them more, to do that than just buying a cubic foot bag of the Centaur or whatever, carbon that's out there. And they just don't want to deal with it, because and I don't think that this person is just all in it for the dough or anything like that. It's just maybe they're they don't want to retool and go a different route with this stuff. So we talked about a bunch of things about the the magnets, about the I think they call it the NAC, or the nucleation process, or TAC, whatever their keyword was from it, which they were very familiar with that, and understanding, that they don't work because people put phosphates in the water. Well, that particular one doesn't work because it doesn't it kind of cancels it out with the anions in the water. But you flip over to a different type of a nucleation, and then this other media is specially blended for that, for water with phosphates and stuff like that. So a lot of times it's just, it's key just to finding out really what do you have in the water, what's in there, and then we can apply the right stuff, and we can apply it correctly, to solve the problems, because you don't want problems. I don't want you to have problems. I don't want problems. I want customers to call me up and thank me and say, yeah, it's working great. If they have a problem, I want to take care of it. But I don't want everybody calling me up saying, hey, you just sold me this thing and it's not working. I don't want to do that. So I'd rather spend, a little extra time to do my due diligence and make sure that what we're providing, and that the customer is completely aware of what we're doing, what we're going to achieve with this. If they want more, that's up to them. If they don't want it, then we need to be at an understanding that this is what this thing does, and it's not a one size fits all. We can do many different things. There are multiple carbon blends and all that stuff. So anyway, I'll leave my information in the description, and then if you have questions or anything, feel free to hit me up, and I can email you back if you want to talk. Leave a phone number or send me an email, and I'll leave you my contact information. Either way is fine with me, and we'll chat about it, and then I'm sure we'll be able to provide a very good solution at a very fair, reasonable cost. What I've done for other customers, because I've helped people all around the country. I've just helped somebody Missouri, New Jersey, in Arizona, and just most recently. And what I typically do is, if you're outside of my service range of being able to provide an installer and stuff for you, what I usually do is I'll try to help you the best thing that you can do. Some people, I just say, if you don't know anything about it, and you don't already have a plumber, get a plumber first and then call me back. Find one that you trust that's willing to do this first and then call me back. If not, you might want to find somebody locally, because it is a headache, to find a plumber. But if you have a good plumber and somebody that you can mention to, hey, I got a piece of water equipment coming. This is what's going to be. The guy, that I got it from, that, set up the deal and is having it drop shipped here, can call you, explain the entire system, tell you, startup process, where I usually mark all the filters and everything anyway, tell you how to load the system and start it up and all that stuff. So I've done that, but the key is try to have your own plumber if you're not in California or close to me in Southern California. So, but anyway, I'm going to try to do some more videos. I started one the other day, but I think I was probably just a little bit not in the right frame of mind, because it's very frustrating, to me, to see others out there that are just capitalizing on ignorance. And ignorance, not a bad word. I'm plenty ignorant of many things. I just don't know. It means you just don't know. But for them, typically what I find is the person that is selling to the customer on a lot of this stuff knows about 5-10% more than the customer does. They just know few things, sizes. They have charts and stuff like that, and so they can sound like they're that they're very aware and that they have a good understanding of what they're talking about. But for the most part, the average, when you're calling some of these, things off of Google, and you're talking to them, which I've talked to a number of them. I mean, a number of them. Nice. They'll, they're very congenial, and you'll get along with them because they're salespeople. They're salespeople that have a basic understanding of what it is that they're selling, and a good salesperson is going to have that. But as far as the dynamics of the water business, again, I revert back to, as we talked about earlier, the plumber. Great guy. He's the guy you want in your house if you need repipe, toilet, service plumbing, a new main line run and stuff like that. But for water treatment and how to really put in a system that is, effectively going to help you and give you a much better quality of water, no. They're there to sell their own product, and their own product is identical to the next guy's product, and his product is identical to the next guy's product. They're all the same. There's very few, I don't know of any else here in California that is not on just industry standard carbons and doing basically the same platform, different color, different name tag. It's all going to be essentially the same thing. So if you're my customer, if you've been looking and you're seeing this stuff too, it's all the same. The prices jump from here to here to here to here, and the promises the same all across the board. And you just want to get the truth. Well, here's the truth about water. Are you going to make it perfect? No. Can you get it a lot better? Yes. Are you going to get it a lot better by just about everybody else in here? You're going to get it better. Now we have to define what a lot means. The difference in the type of components that I use is I know the quality is there. The quality is there. Can I say it's going to be a lot better light years ahead of the next guy? And at a price point that is going to reflect better than the next guy, typically, and so I'll shut up after that. But anyway, if there's anything I can do to help you answer any questions or anything like that, feel free to hit me up, shoot me an email, and I'll get back with you as soon as I can, and try to help you out. So anyway, have a wonderful day. God bless, and I'll try to put out another video here in the next few days. Thanks. Take care.